There's a reason why you keep hitting that invisible wall. It's not your work ethic. It's not your intelligence. It's not your talent, your timing, or your tools. It's something deeper. Much deeper. It's the quiet ache that started long before you had a bank account, before you even had the language to name it. It's the moment you were told you weren't enough. The moment they laughed when you spoke your dream out loud. The moment you needed love, and instead you got silence. That wound didn't just scar your heart. It shaped your identity. It wrapped itself around your nervous system, coded itself into your decision-making, and whispered into your ear every time you stood at the edge of greatness. Who do you think you are? That voice is not you. It was planted in you, and until you rip it out by the root, it will keep blocking the very wealth you were born to create. Not just financial wealth, but the wealth of peace, certainty, purpose, joy, and power. But here's the truth they never taught you. Most people are broke because they're carrying a wound. They never healed because you don't attract what you want, you attract what you believe you deserve. And if deep down you believe you're unworthy of success, you will sabotage every opportunity that comes your way. You'll delay the call. You'll discount your worth. You'll play small and call it humility. But the truth is, you're just trying not to be seen, because being seen once meant being judged. Being visible once meant being hurt. And so you hide in plain sight. You grind, you hustle, you even succeed a little, but never past the level your inner wound allows, because your nervous system is trained to feel safe and struggle, not in overflow. Somewhere along the line, you learned that survival earns love, that peace is suspicious, that abundance is for other people, people who aren't like you, people who weren't scarred like you. But hear me clearly. Wealth doesn't belong to the unscared. It belongs to the unafraid. And if you're brave enough to face the shadow of your childhood, to look that wound in the eye, not with shame, not with blame, but with power, you will begin to reclaim your wealth. Because your wound is not your enemy. It's your initiation. It's not your ceiling, it's your doorway. But only if you stop numbing it. Only if you stop trying to build over it and instead finally excavate it. Because nothing sustainable can be built on a cracked foundation. That's why you see people win big and lose it all, because their inner child was never upgraded. Because their 8-year-old self is still running their 40-year-old bank account, still trying to prove they're worthy, still trying to earn love from people who no longer even matter. You want wealth? Real, expansive, lasting wealth? Then you have to rewrite the code. Not just your strategy, your identity. Because the game of wealth is not a game of dollars. It's a game of alignment. And you cannot stay in alignment with abundance if your nervous system is calibrated to rejection. You have to become the kind of person that wealth feels safe landing on. You have to stop chasing money from a place of fear and start becoming the version of you who naturally attracts it. Because money is energy, and energy flows toward alignment, not perfection, alignment. And alignment doesn't start in your budget or your business. It starts in your basement. In the dark, dusty corners of your childhood beliefs. The ones you don't talk about. The ones you laugh off. The ones you buried so deep you forgot they were still breathing. You think you need another course, another job, another investor. No, you need a mirror. Because the biggest block between you and your wealth is the part of you that still believes you're not worthy of it. The wound is not just emotional, it's neurological. It creates a ceiling in your brain, in your behavior, in your body. Every time you step into a room that's too big, too bright, too successful, your wound pulls the handbrake. It's not logic. It's protection. But you're not 8 years old anymore. You don't need their validation. You don't need to wait for permission to rise. You're not the scared child anymore. You're the architect now. You get to rewrite the rules. But only if you stop playing the old game. The game of hiding, of people-pleasing, of seeking applause instead of purpose. Because here's what they won't tell you. Most people stay broke because their inner child doesn't trust success. It feels foreign, unsafe, temporary. So they sabotage it before it ever becomes real. They ghost the opportunity. They reject the compliment. They undercharge their worth. Why? Because if I succeed, I'll be seen. If I'm seen, I'll be judged. If I'm judged, I'll be hurt. That loop has nothing to do with your bank account and everything to do with your nervous system. You've been trained to fear visibility because your earliest moments of exposure were tied to pain. And until you disconnect those wires, you will keep short-circuiting every time the light finds you. But here's the twist: that pain wasn't punishment. It was preparation. Every scar you carry, it's sacred. Every wound, a reminder that you survived. You made it through what others didn't. You endured. But now, you must alchemize it. Now you must turn survival into strategy. Now you must turn your pain into your path, because the very moment you stop avoiding your wound and begin transforming it is the moment everything begins to shift. You will walk differently, speak differently, ask differently, charge differently, because you're no longer leading from lack, you're leading from truth. And truth is magnetic. It pulls the people, the partnerships, the prosperity, but it can only flow through you if you make space for it. Clear the wound, clear the wealth. They're more connected than you think. When a child is ignored, they learn to whisper. When they're dismissed, they learn to doubt. When they're punished for shining too bright, they dim themselves just to survive. And some of you right now, you've built your entire adult life around avoiding that original pain. You picked a safe career. You surrounded yourself with predictable people. You stayed in the comfort zone, not because it made you happy, but because it kept you from being hurt again. But that safety, it's suffocating your potential. It's wrapping your ambition in chains and calling it stability. You were born for wealth, not just in finances, but in freedom. But freedom doesn't come from playing it safe. It comes from reclaiming the parts of you that the world told you to bury. It comes from walking back into that childhood room, not as the child, but as the adult you've become, and saying, I see you. You were never too much. You were never wrong to dream that big. You were never meant to shrink. Because here's the truth: you cannot manifest from a place of shame. You cannot rise when your soul is still shackled to an outdated story about who you're allowed to become. The past is not the enemy, but staying there is, because wealth lives in the now. Wealth lives in the hands of those brave enough to take responsibility for their future, even when their past tried to write a different script. The wealthiest people in the world, they're not the smartest, they're not the most connected, they're the most free. Free from the need to be liked, free from the fear of rejection, free from the inner child that begs, please don't leave me again. You want to be rich, then become whole, because nothing drains wealth faster than an unhealed soul. You'll spend your life overcompensating, buying things you don't need, chasing applause you don't respect, trying to fill a hole that only truth can touch. That hole, that's the echo of a childhood moment when you felt invisible, when you were abandoned, not always physically, but emotionally, when your brilliance was met with silence instead of celebration. And here's what happens: if you don't go back and meet that child with compassion, you'll build your whole empire on top of a wound. And one day, that empire will collapse, not because you weren't capable, but because you never felt safe enough to truly receive. You'll keep pushing wealth away with one hand while reaching for it with the other. That's the insanity of an unhealed belief system. It contradicts itself. It craves success, but fears attention. It dreams of more, but clings to less. Because less is familiar, and familiar feels safe. But nothing great was ever born in the familiar. You must walk beyond the gate of comfort and into the wild unknown of your next identity. You must become the version of you that your 7-year-old self would have believed in, the one who speaks truth without trembling, the one who walks into rooms and no longer looks for approval because they are the approval. This is the upgrade that changes everything. It's not in your resume. It's not in your strategy deck. It's in your nervous system. Because wealth doesn't show up when you beg for it. It shows up when you become the person who no longer chases. It shows up when you finally stop auditioning for a life you already own. And if you want that kind of wealth, deep-rooted, divine wealth, then you need to go back to the first time you felt small and bring that version of you home. Home to your strength. Home to your truth. Home to a new belief system. Because you're not who they said you were. You're not the insecure child, not the rejected student, not the abandoned dreamer. You're the one who survived that season. And you are the only one who can represent the part of you that's still waiting for someone to say, you're enough. You've always been enough. Do you understand how powerful You become when you stop negotiating your worth, when you stop tying your value to your validation. That's when everything shifts. Your energy changes, your language changes, your decisions change. You stop saying maybe. You start saying watch me. Because now, you're not leading from fear, you're leading from identity. A healed identity. One that knows that money is not the reward. It's the reflection. The reflection of who you've become. You don't attract wealth by chasing it. You attract it by matching it. And wealth is not anxious. It's not desperate. It's not people-pleasing. It's firm, focused, free. You want money to trust you. Then become the kind of person who doesn't betray themselves. Stop saying yes when you mean no. Stop lowering your price to be liked. Stop showing up as a watered-down version of yourself just to make others comfortable. That was the child's strategy for staying safe. But you're not the child anymore. You're the leader now. You're the creator now. You are the one who gets to say, that wound stopped with me. You are the cycle breaker, the pattern ender, the new bloodline, but only if you choose it. Because wealth is a choice, and the first choice you must make is this: to no longer be ruled by a wound, to no longer build your future from the blueprint of your pain. To rise from identity, not insecurity. To lead from healing, not hustle. Because the world doesn't need another overachiever chasing validation. It needs whole human beings anchored in truth, aligned with purpose, and fearless in their worth. And that starts with you. Right now. Not when you get the next job, not when the market shifts, not when someone finally believes in you. It starts when you believe in you. When you decide that your future is worth more than your fear. When you reclaim the throne from the wounded child who's been silently driving the car. You're not a child anymore. You're the one holding the keys. Now act like it. There's a moment in every transformation when the mirror becomes your battlefield. Not the world, not the market, not your past, just you and the reflection. And that reflection doesn't lie. It shows the truth behind your excuses. It echoes the real reason you procrastinate, undercharge, overgive, or self-destruct when success knocks. It shows you the version of you who still flinches when things go right because you've learned to only feel safe when things go wrong. That's not mindset. That's muscle memory. It's the body remembering what your brain tried to forget. And until you bring that pattern to light, it will own your decisions in the dark. You'll build halfway. You'll speak halfway. You'll live halfway. And halfway dreams never build full lives. Let me be clear, you were never born to settle. You were conditioned to. From the moment you were taught that needing help was weakness. From the moment they told you that wanting more was selfish. From the moment your brilliance made someone else insecure and you took their discomfort as your fault. That's when the dimming began. And the tragedy isn't just that you believed them. It's that you started betraying yourself to belong. You traded authenticity for acceptance, voice for approval, power for peacekeeping. And that trade, it cost you millions. Because wealth doesn't land on people who lie to themselves. It lands on the honest, the brave, the ones willing to look themselves in the soul and say, I refuse to keep playing this broken role. That role they gave you, the one where you stay small, soft-spoken, self-doubting. Burn it. You were never meant to be cast as the backup character in your own life. You are not the helper. You're the architect. You're not the shadow. You're the flame. But no one will hand you that title. You have to claim it by confronting the pain that's been shaping your personality. Because let's be honest, a lot of what you call who I am is just trauma with a name tag. It's not you. It's who you had to become to survive your story. But now it's time to choose who you want to be. To thrive in your future. And choice is the most radical act of wealth there is. Because people who don't feel safe or don't feel free enough to choose, they react, they obey, they conform. But the moment you say, I choose something higher, that's the moment you step into your wealth identity. Because wealth isn't just about income, it's about influence. Over your time, over your energy, over your internal state. Wealth is not just a bank statement, it's a nervous system that doesn't panic when you receive. It's the ability to hold peace when things go well. To hold joy without guilt. To hold overflow without sabotage. Can you do that? Or does your body still believe success is dangerous? Does your inner child still associate love with effort, attention with danger, joy with punishment? If so, that's the root. That's the real blockage, not your resume, not your brand. Not your algorithm. It's your wiring. You were taught to earn love by overachieving. You were rewarded for being convenient, polite, silent. And now you wonder why being visible feels like violence. Because your system never learned how to receive. It only knows how to earn. But wealth isn't something you earn through exhaustion. It's something you align with through embodiment. That means you must become the kind of person who doesn't perform for abundance, but attracts it by being rooted in truth. And truth, it doesn't hustle. It doesn't beg. It doesn't justify. It simply is. And the sooner you stop negotiating with your old self, the faster your future self can walk in. Because there's a version of you already waiting. The version that doesn't play small. The one that raises their price not just in business, but in relationships, in standards, in values. The one that no longer chases more to fill an emotional void. Because that void has been healed. And that healing, that is your wealth. Because when you're whole, you stop leaking energy into things that don't serve you. You stop tolerating situations that drain you. You stop explaining your worth to people committed to misunderstanding you. You stop apologizing for being powerful. Can you even imagine that? A life where you don't shrink to soothe someone else's ego? Where you don't silence your fire just to keep the peace? Where you let yourself shine not from ego, but from essence? That's not a fantasy, that's a frequency. But you have to tune into it. And tuning in means tuning out everything you were taught to believe about suffering. You were told that struggle makes you holy, that self-denial is noble, that wealth is suspect, that pleasure must be earned. But all of that, it's just spiritual poverty disguised as humility. You weren't put here to scrape by. You were put here to overflow, to bless others from your surplus, not your sacrifice. But first, you must believe you're worthy of the surplus. You must see that you were never too much, that your desires aren't dangerous, that your longing for more isn't greedy, it's divine. Because the dream you carry, it didn't come from ego. It came from God. And the one that told you otherwise, that was a lie. It's time to dismantle that lie, not with vengeance, but with vision. A vision so clear, so aligned, so undeniable that your past has no choice but to bow to your future. And if you think that's dramatic, good. Because nothing changes with lukewarm conviction. You can't whisper your way into a wealthy life. You have to roar. You have to declare it first to yourself, then to the world. You have to walk into every room like your presence is the answer to someone's prayer. Because it is. You're not just here to make money, you're here to make impact. To awaken others by becoming the living proof of what healing looks like, of what power looks like, of what it means to be both soft and sovereign. To say, I've been hurt, but I'm not hiding. I've been wounded, but I'm still rising. I've been doubted, but I'm done doubting myself. That's the frequency of wealth. It doesn't require you to be perfect. It requires you to be present. To stop living inside the echo chamber of your childhood and step fully into your leadership. Because that's what the world is missing. Not more tactics, more truth. And the truth is, you are enough. You always were. But now it's time to act like it. Enough of shrinking for survival. Enough of pretending you're fine settling for crumbs when your soul was built for feasts. You don't need to be louder. You need to be clearer. You don't need to hustle harder. You need to heal deeper. Because the issue was never that you didn't work hard enough. It's that you didn't feel worthy of what hard work could bring. And so you made wealth your enemy while secretly longing for it. You demonized abundance while aching to breathe it. But how could you allow it in when the wounded child inside you still believed it wasn't safe? Wealth only comes to those who can hold it. Not with their hands, but with their nervous system. You've been trained to brace for loss the moment you taste gain. To anticipate collapse the second you rise. That's not financial trauma. That's identity trauma. Because if you were taught that joy comes with a catch, you'll never feel safe with joy in your hands. If you were taught that success means distance, you'll push it away before anyone can leave you behind. And if your childhood taught you to equate attention with danger, you'll do everything to stay invisible, even while you pray to be seen. You see the contradiction? That's what's costing you. Not the economy, not the competition, not the circumstances. It's the internal war. You get to hand them a legacy, a new normal, a new rhythm, not just of money, but of meaning. And you don't do that by copying everyone else's blueprint. You do it by becoming the kind of person who doesn't abandon themselves ever again, because you've been abandoned enough. By systems, by people, by the past. But the worst betrayal is self-abandonment. When you silence your truth because you're afraid of discomfort. When you lie to yourself because the truth feels too painful to hold. When you keep playing out the same patterns because changing them would mean facing what you've spent years avoiding. But listen, that discomfort you're avoiding, that's the door. Walk through it. Feel the ache. Grieve what was lost. Then rise new. Because that's where your wealth begins. In the rising. In the courage to no longer perform for survival. In the strength to let go of what's familiar and claim what's true. In the fire of saying, I don't need to be fixed, I need to be free. And freedom doesn't come from avoiding your story. It comes from owning it so fiercely that nothing from it controls you anymore. Not the fear, not the guilt, not the voice that says not yet. Yes, now. Now is the time to step into your wealth identity. Not because the world is ready, but because you are. You're not waiting on a sign. This is the sign. You're not waiting for conditions to be perfect. You're choosing yourself anyway. You're not seeking another mentor to validate you. You're mentoring your own inner child. You are becoming the person you once needed. And from that place, there's no ceiling. Only truth, only power, only wealth rooted in your wholeness. And when you build from wholeness, nothing can take it away. Because it didn't come from force. It came from alignment. And alignment, that's how empires are born.